Hello, I'm Katie Donahue, Editor-in-Chief of Whitewall Magazine. On behalf of Whitewall, I would like to welcome you to the 5th annual Lexus Art Series, Art and Innovation Talks by Whitewall with Design Miami. And to our panel today, what's next for designers and creatives in a post-pandemic world, looking at the big takeaways of 2020 for the creative industry. So our panelists joining us, Yves Bahar, the founder and principal designer of Fuse Project, who has pioneered design as a force for positive social and environmental change. Kevin Hunter, president of CalT Design Research, whose vision has been behind the LFLC and the LC 500. Nikolai and Simon Haas, multidisciplinary artists whose work explores nature, science fiction, psychedelia. And Marcel Wanders, founder of the leading product and interior design studio out of Amsterdam, known for creating worlds of fantasy. Okay, let's just get started. I'd love to just hear from all of you. Obviously, this has been a big year, lots of change. I guess what's kind of your day-to-day look like right now and how that's a little bit different than, a year ago. Maybe we can start with Simon and Nikolai.
Sure. Our team is pared down and we have less people. I'd say like one of the major changes in our studio is that we're very active in trying to push money into communities that don't have money, and now we've become the community. We have money, so it's hard. It's like gotten harder to do that kind of stuff, which was a really big part of our practice. And all joking aside, what that's meant is just I don't think there's a person this year that hasn't looked at their lives and gone like, is this even important? And then ultimately, I think you decide parts of it are and parts of it aren't. And so it's like an excellent opportunity to sort of spend time looking at yourself and your practice and understanding what it is that you do that is worth doing when stuff gets normal again. It was a huge privilege to have been, I think, skating through the world the way we all have for such a long period of time. And I hope that years from now, when everything is back to normal, we all remember, just how lucky we are just to be able to, do what we do. I think that's been the main thing, is just a refocusing of our intention and trying to understand our own practice as well as we can, So it's become more introspective.
It feels a lot more now like it did 10 years ago, which is kind of cool. It's like reinvigorating me in a way, and I'm having to shift digital a whole lot more. Like I spend a lot of time doing renderings now, which I didn't really do. So it's cool. We're just reframing everything and restarting essentially.
Kevin, for you, what's that look like?
Well, I mean, for us, it's a huge change because a lot of our work deals with physical properties, models, clay models of exterior automotive, interior automotive. So we're basically all working from home for the most part, unless someone has a job that's modeling or fabricating, and then they're coming into studio. We have small teams coming in here and there, but I would say mostly 80% of our company is working remote. And, needless to say, that's been a huge challenge. But we've already transitioned to a lot of digital tools by now. We've been underway doing that for the last 5 years at least anyway. So it's been a big test of our digital tools and how good they actually are and how good we are with them for the most part, whether we've been educating ourselves enough and, moving away from physical models as a primary way to express our ideas, to show what we're doing and what our intention is for design. So communication's a big challenge. We still deal with a lot of engineering teams and a lot of planning teams, and they're, some of them are in Texas. They're in Toyota's headquarters in Texas. We're in California, and we also have a design studio in Michigan outside Detroit. So we're all just trying to keep, good communication and sharing data, a lot of data sharing and a lot of online meetings. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a huge difference from previously. How about you, Marcel? How do things look right now for you?
Life's amazing. I mean, I've learned how to cook. Really, I'm pretty good at it by now, and also vacuum cleaning is not such a bad thing to learn. So no, I've learned a few things. I did a few other courses that are interesting, online courses. So on that note, I think it's an amazing period because there's so much time to invest in things that basically maybe normally you don't want to find the time for it. Um, at the same time, also in the studio, I mean, we were quickly in sending everybody home, making sure everybody's connected online. And so in a way that's working pretty well. I think there is a sense of efficiency that's higher than we are used to, because in a way there's less, yes, yeah, less spoilage of ideas and less spoilage of time. And that's what worries me, because I think one of the really good things about my studio is that we're not efficient. It's really one of our major qualities that we do things 5 times instead of 2 times, or we just make too many ideas and then we pick the right ones. And so I think we're a bit efficient, and you know, we're trying to do everything really well, and we don't fuck up as much as we're supposed to do. And so that's a bit worrying. We have hired people from further away because we think like, oh, if later they're with us like once a week, maybe it's fine. So it's a bit different on that aspect. In Moy, which is the company that I art director, we were on a path of taking the road a little bit different already like 2 years ago. So we started to give less power to the big international events, but to the more local events. So to not do one big party, but to 30 small parties, more or less, right? And but I thought it was the right thing to do, have people fly less, be more aware of what's happening in their area, because the world's a big place at the end, right? We think it's small, but it's at the end it's big. And so that turned out the right thing. You know, it's the kind of thing that we build on now. Yeah. It's boring. It's boring.
I assure you, it is not.
My daughter was planning to go to San Francisco for her internship. She's sitting in my room here next door.
Well,
I like her.
San
So it's good. I
Francisco.
like her. So it's good. But she should have been, you know, with these beautiful people in San Francisco.
We love to eat our things in San Francisco.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that's the same. I mean, when you say small changes, I'm talking about big changes, right? But I think after the first week, when everybody was in shock in mid-March, you know, that first week, you know, it was hard to feel like your skills and your passions were needed, or were, you know, something that was relevant at the time. But we got involved in a lot of relief and COVID related projects, which kind of, it makes you feel when you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, now there's something I can contribute. Now there's something I can do. It gets you past that shock, that initial shock. But yeah, we're, you know, 75 people working remotely. So that's a lot of different, you know, circumstances. You know, everybody is, you know, in different places. Everybody has different families, issues and whatnot. So it's certainly a lot to deal with. And just like Marcel, you know, I have my kids around all the time, which is great, which I personally love. And not traveling is pretty good, even though I got very lucky because I ended up spending 3 months in Lisbon in Portugal. And so, you know, working from a different perspective was really good. Nice. Yeah, you know, trying to stay relevant, trying to think about design resilience. How are the things that we design, the products, the systems, resilient to dramatic change like the one we've just experienced?
Yeah, I was so curious to hear from you all how this time, and Nikolai and Simon, you mentioned even thinking of like, is what I do worthy? How, when you were able to reflect on that, what that then meant as like the next thing you were going to work on. So maybe if the two of you could start about and tell us a little bit about, how that reflection then led to what you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us it was more about, because we are sort of half design, half art in general, and I think we've been leaning further into just the emotional aspect of what we do rather than the functional. So it's kind of the trajectory we were on anyway, but COVID had a way of, I think, forcing everybody into where they were headed faster. And so, like Nikki's been sculpting a lot of sculptures of like hugging things, for example, just stuff that we miss, more like emotional and feeling.
I think like if you're somebody that's making something that a lot of people see, you're a little bit responsible for telling people how to feel after all of this is done, So all of us together, not just like one person or another. So I think it's just ultimately, yeah, we did decide what we do is important and that there's a reason for it. And that it's going to be more important than it ever has been once we get through this situation. And I guess you need to be planning those things right now in order for us at least, our studio needs a year or two to execute a collection. Mm-hmm. And so it's just looking like we're just making all the things we miss about the way stuff was and what we're hoping for the future.
And our designs were never like, as far as really important functions, we never really had those. So that's why I think it's gone more towards sculptural, and we're not designing like anything medical or our chairs are just ridiculous and not that useful. So we've leaned way into let's make it just about how it feels.
Yeah, but there's important
nice.
Functions like getting people to vote or like to be excited about the future, or to like think about other people, or to reach out and try to make someone that's maybe not in a good spot feel good, or so yeah, it's I think it's gotten more important. It felt less important for a second, and now it's becoming like a mission rather than just a job.
Yeah.
So like we realize we still want to do this, even though it's a lot harder than it was before, which is, I think, a good sign. There's definitely certain things we don't want to do. I'm liking the not traveling and the kids at home too. That's amazing. Like I have a little son, and that's awesome. But as far as a practice,
I like miss traveling.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, so I need to travel. So
yeah.
Have fun.
Marcel, Eve, or Kevin?
Well, the few things that I think are now changing is that I think we got a few conversations and questions on our path, which are about the reuse of retail space. Like, I mean, there's an interesting amount of space that will be obsolete soon, or at least temporary. Able to do something else. There's some other areas that are really changing, that really change their logic. But to me, if you want to see the overall picture, I think if you if I look at the last few months, the one thing that struck me is the amount of change that happened in what I felt about where I am. I felt hopeless. I felt super strong. I felt safe. I felt scared. I felt I know what's going to happen. I felt I have no fucking idea anymore. So I've gone through this amazing roller coaster. And I think it's what all of us have done, because the information has always been incomplete and it's always gone everywhere. And it's what we have to deal with, right? I think what's an interesting way to look at the current time, therefore, is that maybe we shouldn't try to think about the future so much, because I don't know, it's hard to know something about today, and really it's really hard to understand what's going to happen tomorrow, what's needed tomorrow, right? So we are the type of people that we think about the future, right? And that's what we're supposed to do. But I think this is an amazing moment. We should think about today. So let's change our future thinking in today thinking, because it's complicated enough. I have really very little knowledge about the future. And the other thing is we are international stars, right? So we should think about the world. I think we should think about the street and our house, my kid, the neighbors, and the people in my studio. And I think on even on corporate levels, we advise hotel operators. So let's try not to lead this from the headquarters. Let's give a bit more strength and capacity and trust in the people on the street, because the rules are different, the needs are different, the opportunities are different, and you can do an amazing thing now to create to inspire the renaissance of personal endeavor. It's really a time where we can ask from people things we could never ask, and I think it's beautiful. Therefore, so big picture, I think we should try for a while to go from international to local, and from the future to today, because we probably have no other way to be relevant.
Yeah, that's interesting, Marcel, that you say that. It's true that I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this neighborhood, which you visited actually. I'm here in Bolinas.
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful. We ended up testing everybody in the town.
Oh, we had so much fun when you educated my daughter on surfing. They were really good, and it was so cold the weather. My God, I didn't even want to watch at the water, and they were in it together for more than an hour.
So what we ended up doing in the town is we ended up participating in the testing of the entire 1,800 inhabitants of Bolinas early on. So it was sort of I think it was the first full village or town testing, and that is a real community effort. That is a real local.
Testing what?
Testing for COVID. Testing for what else these days? But we did that in early April, I think, and it was a very interesting kind of endeavor, to really figure out how to do that, figure out how people get signed up, figure out how to bring the science from UCSF. And then we did a number of projects really in that vein. And those were not, sort of big projects that came top down, corporate down. These were really initiatives inside, either the local area or by people in my studio. So, they wanted to design a ventilator. And so I'm like, okay, I'm sure there's a million ventilators out there. Let's design a ventilator that can be assembled in 4 hours and use open source parts, et cetera, et cetera. And we did, and it's in FDA approval now, and it's like under $1,000. So there are things you have to go with the flow more, I guess, and the flow is in the present, as Marcel says. At the same time, I had to balance these internal initiatives and this internal drive that designers have to react with the startups that we work with, which need to survive another day, another month, in order to be out there. And it was really interesting to see the bifurcation. Everything that had to do with retail and consumer goods, has had a very, very difficult time. Everything that had to do with home and fitness and ways to deliver experiences, straight into people's homes has done amazing. So it's really been very like bifurcated, right? There's things that are surprisingly booming and blooming, and there are things that are in survival mode. And having to deal with both as a designer, in this binary fashion, can be a little confusing and a little challenging. But those are the things we need to address on a daily basis.
And Kevin, I wanted to hear from you. I'm always fascinated by automotive design because you're thinking in the future, but like really in the future. And how has, talking about the future, Marcel, and also just about those like emotions, how has kind of this change in human behavior perspective, how is that making you think about the kind of experience people want from their car, and has that come into the design room?
Well, I mean, we're in a time where we're doing a lot of digital communication where maybe we're lacking a little human connection, at this moment. So cars are all about, they're physical objects that, move in our world, and they're mobility devices. And so I can't help but think anyway that we're still going to want something emotional in the future, and something that feels more human, perhaps less, machine-like. Maybe as we get into this whole understanding of our digital environment we're in now, where everything literally seems to be moving in that direction. Maybe this whole experience we've all been going through, there are good points to it and bad parts of it, and maybe we'll sort through some of those things a little faster, having been through this experience, than we normally would have, on a normal trajectory of getting immersed in more of a digital world, and what that all means from a human connection point of view. So, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's really affected our product direction all that much from what we've been doing. We have to plan things well into the future. And we tend to work, personally for us, we're working on more near to midterm projects right now. But what it really has done is it's caused us to have a massive reflection on our process. And we tend to be a process-driven organization because it requires so many different groups and large teams of people to get a automobile manufactured. So we've been looking at the way we communicate. We tend to be a face-to-face company, so it's not really unusual for me to hop on a plane and fly to Japan for 1 or 2 meetings and come back. That was our normal existence, and that is that human connection, that face-to-face connection that we all think adds benefit to our process. But I think what we're finding out is maybe it's not quite as essential as we thought it was, and it's accelerated our ability and maybe our acceptance of newer ways to work that can actually be more efficient without being in physical contact with one another. So, for example, now we're doing complete, VR, virtual reality reviews, where I'm in Newport Beach. We have a studio in Ann Arbor, and we're linked up to Japan, and we're all looking at the same model together. We're all looking at the same data together in a 3D environment, and we can actually have conversations about that property and the nuances of that design. And it's actually pretty darn effective. But we probably wouldn't have tried that. We wouldn't have gotten to that point this quickly had this whole pandemic not happened. So I think there have been some, there's some, of course, terrible things about it, but some good things have come out of it with, at least the way we're working now. And it's kind of pushed us faster into working differently. And we're pretty excited about it, and, the possibilities of where that can go into the future.
Has this time also, I think, like you had to change focus, or is that practicalness of what you're doing day to day that we've already talked about? But I'm more curious if there has been like an opportunity for a new kind of project you hadn't considered before. Eve, you touched upon this a little bit, but I know Nikolai and Simon, you just debuted a jewelry collection, which I think is pretty new for you. Has there been a new project you can kind of think of that was an opportunity you didn't expect from the past few months?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you go for it.
Well, I was going to say the jewelry was something we were sort of working on before this all hit. So it wasn't really like a concept that we come up with. We released it now, which is awesome timing. I think we're stoked about that. But we're opening like a coffee shop. That's something we wouldn't have done otherwise. But it's like a walk-through coffee shop. And the idea is what Marcel was saying. There's like lots of commercial space that's now empty. So what we're trying to do is open tiny spaces that are public sculpture that are free. So people can walk and go see them. You can order a coffee and it's a walk-through, not a drive-through. So you don't have to touch anybody or get close to anyone and like get to see some art. It's like down the street from where I live, which is cool. It's not far from Simon. And then, then you can pull corporate money to do something that's really cool and interesting. Like we're really used to doing fairs and having lots of public interaction with people and talking face to face. So when something like that doesn't exist, it's just shifted the way that we search for location and funding, that kind of stuff. It's also like things that we couldn't have planned. Like we have a museum show at the SCAD Museum in Georgia, and it opens like 5 days after the election. And that got us all hyped because we got to do some t-shirts with the ACLU that are like focused towards getting Georgia to vote. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just to elaborate about like that sort of it's like this has been a catalyst for things that were already happening, like talking about the 3D room that you can go into as everybody going together internationally at the same time. There's been a lot of social things that have happened too, which is pretty rad, that I think have accelerated the way we think and work. And again, it's like, I think we were politically active. We were definitely active in our practice in terms of trying to use our platform to do better socially for the world. And so that's sort of the projects we've been focusing on. Mm-hmm. And then the coffee shop, yeah, that's the thing that we came up with during this time. That's like, oh, that's how we can create public space that people can still go to and find money to make it happen without having to, work with like a museum or a fair, because those are all kind of shut down right now. And then trying to do like small products that people can buy that make them feel connected socially, like doing the t-shirts with the ACLU or downtown for democracy or that kind of stuff.
And we set up our own, since we can't do fairs or shows right now, Nikki mentioned we're doing a museum show at SCAD, and we're not able to show it right now. So we have it just we set it up in our studio, and we've invited like 1 or 2 people to walk through, which is nice. Just personal, private museum show.
Totally. But yeah, the jewelry was cool too.
Yeah.
Small thing that you can have, but it's also like, that's it's a rough thing to buy, expensive jewelry right now. It seems like a funny thing to work into. It still feels important. Like it's cool to interact with somebody on a level where it becomes an heirloom inside of their family, and like it could be something that they own forever, and it could represent something as important as falling in love with somebody, that you have this like physical version of it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just to echo what everyone else is saying, this has been really positive time for self-reflection. I mean, outside of all the negative side effects, which are obviously more important, but there's a lot of growth to be had, and it's changed the way we think a lot. But the coffee shop's the main thing. We're like free public art. That's what sort of we're focused on.
Yeah, it's interesting, like that. I just kind of keep hearing this physical desire. So like, how can we get people in an actual real space? And I love that idea. Yeah. That's great.
But to keep it safe too, right? Because you don't want to just like pack people. We have friends that are like, let's just throw a party and fuck it. And it's like, that's not actually very like socially productive thing to do. No, so it's like trying to find a way to like satiate all those different things. Yeah. So.
Eve, has there been like kind of an opportunity you didn't expect? I mean, you mentioned ventilators, which is incredible and important.
So we're as I said, we worked on testing, we worked on a ventilator, we worked on poster campaign, educational campaign. We did some election stuff as well recently. But the interesting thing for me is like there are projects that were started during COVID, meaning we never actually were in the same room with our partners, and that we did all the development, and they have launched since then. And so it's pretty amazing to think that we can actually do all of this without shaking a single hand, without visiting a single person. And so, it's not ideal. It's not what, I would want to do. There's probably something in between, being constantly on a plane. I probably won't get back to that. I'm pretty sure I won't. And being completely remote, and this group of people being the most people I've seen at once in weeks, that's probably not something that I'll look forward to for a long time in the future as well. So somewhere in between, we'll find, I think, just a better way forward. But it's been interesting. I mean, one of the projects has been the eyeglasses we did with the ocean cleanup with Boyan Slat, which is materials that have been 100% collected from the Pacific garbage patch. So it's 100% oceans plastics that we were able to reconfigure into a product that supports future cleanups. We sold out actually on, I think, almost sold out. It sold out 25,000 units, which will allow for a whole cleanup there. So thinking about economies that are circular, where your entire endeavor is financed through recycled goods, through the reuse of a space, the reuse of a material, the reuse of and a physical asset out there that has been either thrown away or that is not being used today. So I think it's good to think about retail spaces, retail environments that should be used for community. I'm thinking about my office, for example. We haven't been there for 8 or 9 months. And what is the meaning of the office of the future? Is it a place where you check that all your employees are here and you make sure that everybody's working? Or is it a place where people come together more for cultural reasons, more for fun reasons, not so much to be efficient, as Marcel noted, but to have a sense of community, to have a sense of being together. So I think there will be some real positives coming out of it. And I think we've learned a lot. And I think it's the adventure of our lifetime, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I don't think the world, all of us have been in the same predicament in this way for a few, for probably 100 years. So it is quite the world event, and I hope it leads to some adjustments and probably some pretty good parties after, when we can all get back together.
Kevin, I'm also curious, given how our mobility has changed. Most of us really aren't, can't fly or go anywhere, but the car has become. I mean, I know so many people who bought cars this year for the first time in a long time. Maybe not for our LA people, I know that, but there's a lot more people driving. There's things that you can now do with your car. People are really turning to moving around that way. I guess what's the Lexus perspective on that?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say how all this is going to settle out and what behaviors will stick and what will transition and what will get back to normal. I don't think anybody really knows yet. I mean, clearly it's a moment in time that we're going to get through, and we'll move on to the next step here. But I think one point of view is that the personal transportation, meaning a single user, couple user vehicle, I think has almost become a sanctuary now at this point, moving through the world, because it's your little safety bubble that you're in. And, as I'm, driving around through the city and there's people on the street and everyone's masked up, and, it looks like a pretty dire situation. You're in your own little cocoon, moving through this dangerous world now. So I can totally understand people that suddenly haven't had a car. Maybe they've been relying on public transport, and they want a car now. They want that personal protection that can afford them. So there's always going to be public transport and personal transport. I'm imagining how public transport might evolve in the future, though, given the situation we're in. And maybe it's not as public as it used to be. Maybe there needs to be little protection bubbles within the public transport system to give someone the feeling of security and safety and trust as they're moving about the world. And I also wonder about the shared economy, of the Ubers and Lyfts and sharing we share everything now. We share our homes and garages and all kinds of things, and the impact that's going to have into the future. So, again, hopefully, I think a lot of it will get past this horrible moment we're in, and some things will return to normal. But I think some things won't, and it will cause some reflection into probably a lot of behaviors that we've come to recognize and count on as always being there, and they may change and not come back.
Yeah, I think that will be interesting to see kind of what human behaviors will stick, right? And what that looks like. But I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to join today and speaking. It's been a pleasure to listen into. Thank you, Marcel, for staying up.
Oh, don't worry. It was great to be with you guys.
And for,
I'm happy the world is still there. We can still have a conversation. You can always call me. Don't worry. I have nothing else to do.
and for, thanks for joining on a holiday week as well for everyone. So this has been a real pleasure. It's great. And, maybe we'll all get together at a really good party in like 2022, and that will be nice.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you all.